The last place you'd expect to build your tech career. In 2025, there's a platform that every career advisor will tell you to avoid. It's chaotic, it's polarizing, and yes, it's become a minefield of rage bait and algorithmic manipulation. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. If you're trying to break into tech or accelerate your engineering career, abandoning X entirely might be the biggest strategic mistake you can make. Not because it's a pleasant place to spend your time, but because it remains the only digital space where the entire hierarchy of the technology industry gets flattened into a single feed. The question isn't whether X is broken. It obviously is. The question is whether you can filter the noise effectively enough to extract the signal that still makes it the highest leverage tool for career acceleration in our industry.
The architecture of access. Let's talk about something that doesn't exist anywhere else in professional networking: true hierarchical collapse. On LinkedIn, you send a connection request to a VP of engineering, and it sits in their inbox with 4,000 others filtered by algorithms that prioritize people who already have warm introductions. On GitHub, you can open an issue on a major open source project, but you're still essentially shouting into a queue managed by maintainers who owe you nothing. On Discord servers and Slack communities, you're segmented into channels with permission levels and moderation layers that recreate the very corporate structures we're trying to bypass. But on X, something fundamentally different happens. You can reply directly to the person who created the framework you're using, not through a formal process, not through a community manager, but directly to them, in the same thread where they're discussing it with other core contributors. This isn't networking theater. This is actual access. When a junior developer in Sao Paulo replies to a thread from the Rust core team about memory safety patterns, and that reply is insightful enough, it gets seen. Not eventually, not filtered through layers of corporate PR, but immediately in the same context where decisions about the language's future are being discussed in public. When you spot a bug in Vercel's new deployment system and tweet about it with a clear reproduction case, you're not filing a ticket that might get triaged in 2 weeks. You're potentially starting a conversation with the people who can fix it in the next commit. This is why senior engineers who've left the platform with frustration often quietly maintain burner accounts. They know that when they need to understand why a breaking change was made to a critical dependency, a single, well-formed question in the right thread will get them an answer from the actual decision maker faster than any other channel. The flattening of hierarchy isn't a bug of X's chaotic design. For people who know how to use it, it's the entire feature.
The velocity of knowledge. There is a specific kind of learning that only happens at the speed of X, and it's transforming how developers stay current. Traditional education moves at the pace of curriculum design. YouTube tutorials are bottlenecked by video production time. Even blog posts require an editorial process that introduces lag between discovery and publication. But the kind of micro-learning that happens in well-crafted threads operates at a completely different velocity. A senior infrastructure engineer realizes something profound about database indexing strategies while debugging a production issue at 2 in the morning. Within minutes, that insight is formulated into a thread that explains a complex concept in 8 tweets, complete with ASCII diagrams and links to benchmarks. By the time that same engineer would have finished writing a proper blog post, thousands of developers have already integrated that knowledge into their mental models and moved on to applying it. This isn't superficial knowledge. These are architectural insights, performance optimization techniques, and debugging strategies that would take pages of documentation to explain formally, but can be transmitted with brutal efficiency when stripped down to their essential logic. The best technical accounts on X have mastered this format. They're not dumbing down concepts, they're distilling them to their purest form, removing all the ceremonial packaging that traditional technical writing requires. You learn about cap theorem trade-offs not from a textbook chapter, but from a thread by someone who just made those exact trade-offs at scale and is processing the lessons in real time. You understand why a particular CSS trick works by seeing the 3-tweet explanation from someone who maintains a major component library. This is knowledge transmission optimized for the exact constraints of how developers actually learn, in the stolen moments between meetings, while waiting for CI pipelines to complete, during the subway commute where you can't watch a video, but you can read. The criticism that this promotes shallow understanding misses the point entirely. These aren't replacements for deep study. They're the index, the breadcrumb trail, the map that tells you which deep study is worth your time. In an industry where new frameworks launch every week and paradigms shift every quarter, having a feed that surfaces what actually matters, validated by people who are implementing it in production right now, is worth more than any curated learning platform.
The serendipity engine. Here's where X becomes genuinely strange as a career tool, and where it diverges most sharply from LinkedIn's deterministic networking model. On LinkedIn, career opportunities follow a predictable path. You optimize your profile with keywords, you connect with recruiters, you apply to posted positions, and if your resume matches their search criteria, you might get a response. It's a matching algorithm, clean and logical. X operates on a completely different principle: manufactured serendipity. The concept is simple but powerful. By posting your technical insights publicly, by sharing what you're building, by contributing thoughtful replies to conversations that are happening in your field, you dramatically increase what we might call your luck surface area. You're not networking in the traditional sense. You're making yourself discoverable to opportunities that haven't been formulated yet. The mechanics of how this works in practice are fascinating. A developer tweets a thread explaining how they optimized a particularly gnarly React rendering issue. That thread gets surfaced to someone's feed not because of follower count, but because the algorithm recognizes technical depth and engagement quality. That someone happens to be a founder struggling with the exact same problem at their startup. 3 replies later, there's a DM conversation. 2 weeks later, there's an offer. This isn't a fairy tale. This is a pattern that plays out constantly, and it works precisely because it's not optimized for corporate hiring processes. The founder wasn't planning to hire. The developer wasn't looking for a job. The opportunity emerged from the collision of publicly shared knowledge and genuine need. This is the opposite of how we're told professional networking should work, which is perhaps why it's so powerful. The same dynamic applies to co-founder relationships, freelance opportunities, and conference speaking invitations. When you share your technical journey in public, you're essentially running a continuous background process that matches your expertise and working style with people who resonate with it. The authenticity factor matters enormously here. LinkedIn is corporate theater, where everyone performs a polished version of their professional self. X, for better or worse, is where developers share their actual personalities. They talk about burnout. They joke about imposter syndrome. They share the failed projects alongside the successes. And counterintuitively, this vulnerability makes for stronger professional relationships. Because when someone eventually reaches out about an opportunity, there's already a sense of cultural fit. They're not hiring a resume. They're hiring someone whose technical judgment and working style they've observed over months of public posts. The trick is that you have to be genuinely yourself, because the platform is remarkably good at detecting performative authenticity, and engineers especially have finely tuned bullshit detectors. The beginner's secret weapon. For self-taught developers and career switchers, X offers something that solves one of the most painful problems in breaking into tech: the credibility gap. You don't have a computer science degree. You don't have years of professional experience at recognizable companies. You're trying to prove that you can do the work, but every job posting wants proof you've already done the work. This is where the 100 Days of Code movement reveals its genius and why it continues to work even as the platform around it deteriorates. The mechanism is beautifully simple. You commit to coding for at least 1 hour every day for 100 consecutive days. You tweet your progress publicly with the hashtag. That's it. But what you're actually doing is far more sophisticated than it appears. First, you're manufacturing accountability. When you declare your intention publicly and update your progress daily, you're creating social pressure that helps you push through the inevitable moments where motivation fails. The community that follows the hashtag isn't just passive observers, they're people on the same journey. And the mutual support structure that emerges turns what could be an isolated, discouraging grind into something that feels like a collective project. You're less likely to quit when 30 other people in your same position are cheering you on. But the second effect is even more powerful. You're creating an immutable public log of your discipline and growth. Every day's tweet is a timestamp, proving that you showed up and did the work. By day 100, you don't have a portfolio project, you have something better. 100 days of documented consistency. When a hiring manager or potential client looks at your profile, they don't see someone claiming they can code. They see proof that you have the discipline to show up every single day and improve incrementally. For self-taught developers, this external validation is worth more than any online certificate because it demonstrates the exact traits that employers care about most: grit, consistency, and the ability to learn independently. The format also forces you to build in public, which accelerates learning in ways that private practice never could. When you tweet about the bug you're stuck on, someone who solved that exact problem last month will reply with a solution. When you share a small win, like finally understanding closures or successfully deploying your first API, you're not just celebrating, you're also inviting feedback and correction from people who are further along the path. The learning compounds. By the end of 100 days, you haven't just learned to code, you've learned to communicate about code, to debug publicly, to take feedback, and to present your work in ways that make sense to other developers. These are the soft skills that separate developers who can write code from developers who can work on teams and ship products. And you've acquired them through a free, open process that anyone with internet access can replicate. The barrier to entry is zero except for discipline, which is exactly the barrier that should exist.
The reality no one wants to discuss. Now we need to talk about what makes all of this significantly harder than it should be. Because pretending X is some kind of meritocratic utopia would be dishonest and ultimately counterproductive. The platform has fundamental structural problems that make using it for professional purposes an exercise in wading through garbage to find gold. Let's be specific. Organic reach is throttled in ways that make it nearly impossible for new accounts to gain traction without paying for premium features. The algorithmic feed prioritizes engagement over quality, which means well-researched technical threads get buried beneath rage bait and engagement farming. The discourse is toxic in ways that drain mental energy and make many experienced developers question whether the signal is worth the noise. These aren't minor inconveniences. They're core design problems that reflect the platform's current business model and governance. The engagement farming is particularly insidious because it pollutes the information ecosystem in ways that make finding actual technical value harder every month.
You'll see threads promising to teach you system design that are actually just basic definitions copy-pasted from Wikipedia, formatted to maximize retweets. You'll see accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers sharing programming tips that range from misleading to actively wrong, because accuracy doesn't matter when the goal is viral reach. You'll see people packaging obvious advice into thread templates designed to game the algorithm, creating an endless stream of content that looks substantive but contains no actual insight. For beginners especially, this creates a dangerous environment where bad information is wrapped in the same format as good information, and distinguishing between them requires expertise they don't yet have. The curation burden falls entirely on the user. You have to aggressively curate your feed, block liberally, and develop pattern recognition for what genuine technical discourse looks like versus what's optimized for metrics. The toxicity problem is real and has driven many senior engineers off the platform entirely or onto private communities where they can have technical discussions without the constant undercurrent of hostility. The site's culture has shifted in ways that make sincere technical discourse feel increasingly rare. People are performing for an audience rather than thinking through problems together. The incentive structure rewards hot takes and controversy over measured analysis. And for developers from underrepresented backgrounds, the harassment can be severe enough that participating at all becomes a question of whether the professional benefits outweigh the personal cost. These are not hypothetical concerns. They're the reason many thoughtful technical communities have migrated to Discord, Slack groups, and private forums where gatekeeping ironically creates space for better conversations. The openness that makes X powerful for access is the same openness that makes it hostile. There's no resolving this tension. You can only decide whether the trade-off works for your specific situation and risk tolerance.
The strategic framework. So what does it actually mean to use X effectively for your tech career in this environment? It means you have to fundamentally reconceptualize what the platform is. Stop thinking of it as social media. Stop treating it like entertainment or a place to casually scroll. Start treating it as a professional tool with a specific purpose, staying current on breaking developments and maintaining lightweight connections with people in your field. This requires discipline that most people won't have, which is precisely why it creates an advantage for those who do. The strategy is surgical. Follow a curated list of high-signal engineers and researchers in your specific technical domain. Ignore the algorithmic feed entirely. Use lists. Use mute words aggressively. Build a filter system that blocks out the engagement farmers and controversy merchants. What you're creating is essentially a custom newswire that surfaces genuinely important developments before they hit the blog cycle. The content you create has to be equally strategic. This isn't about building a personal brand or becoming an influencer. It's about demonstrating technical competence in public and increasing your surface area for opportunities. That means posting your actual work. Share the project you're building with honest reflections on what's hard about it. Explain the technical decision you made and why. Write the thread that you wish existed when you were trying to learn the concept you just figured out. Reply to technical discussions where you have something substantive to add. And critically, do all of this without performing. The developers who get the most value from X aren't the ones with the biggest follower counts. They're the ones whose technical judgment is visible in their contributions, who've built trust over time by being consistently helpful and intellectually honest. When you do this correctly, you're not marketing yourself. You're simply making your work visible to people who might need exactly your skill set, or who might teach you something that accelerates your growth. The discipline required is in what you don't do. Don't doom scroll. Don't get pulled into arguments that don't matter. Don't let the platform's addictive design hijack hours of your day. Treat it like a tool you pick up for specific purposes and then put down. Check it once in the morning to see if there are breaking developments in your field. Check it once in the evening to share your progress or contribute to discussions. The rest of the time, close it.
The opportunity cost of time lost to infinite scrolling is enormous, and it will eat your productivity if you let it. The same algorithmic design that can surface valuable connections will also happily feed you an endless stream of content that feels productive but delivers no actual value. You have to be disciplined enough to take what's useful and ignore the rest.
What remains? Here's what it comes down to. X in 2025 is not the platform it was, and it's probably not the platform it should be. It's hostile, it's exhausting, and it requires constant active curation to extract value. But it's also the only place where a self-taught developer in the rural can reply directly to the creator of a framework used by millions. It's the only feed fast enough to surface critical security vulnerabilities before they hit official channels. It's the only network where serendipitous career opportunities still emerge from genuine technical discourse rather than optimized hiring pipelines. For all its flaws, and they are substantial, it remains uniquely powerful for anyone willing to use it strategically rather than passively. The question isn't whether there should be a better alternative. There obviously should. The question is whether you're going to let the perfect be the enemy of the useful while your competitors are mining the signal from the noise. The hierarchy of tech is flattened there in ways it isn't anywhere else. If you can filter effectively, if you can maintain discipline about what you consume and contribute, if you can resist the platform's worst impulses while leveraging its unique structural advantages, then yes, it's still worth it. Just barely. But in tech, barely can be enough.